we are like a community. I think the teacher is kind of a guide. You have to be very confident of yourself. I think that teaching is the way for me to leave my mark on students and on the world.
You fell in love with the profession.
Something that they have taught me is to have a lot of passion and fun in what you're doing. If you're mentioning something that they like or something that is trendy, it's going to be better for them. They are going to have a lot of interest in your class. Something that I do for myself, not only for teaching, for life, is to improve every day.
Hi, welcome, Teacher Miguel. I am thrilled to be with you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I want us to go back to your roots. When you started teaching, was this something you were always inspired to do? How did you get into teaching?
Well, at first, I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher. So I started studying at college, but it was the languages degree. And it was English, French, but also it was teaching, like methodology, strategies, and dynamics, all that stuff. And well, at first I wanted to be a translator. That was my goal at first. But then I was very inspired because something that I really love to do is to leave a mark. And I knew that this was a way to leave a mark on the world and also on students because, well, that's one of the ways you cannot be like forgotten. And that was my first inspiring thing to be a teacher.
You fell in love with the profession, basically.
Yes, in fact, it was for that.
Now, when did you start teaching?
I started teaching when I was 19. I was very young. And yes, it was in a very small school. We had only like 3 classrooms and it was very near from my home. And it was only on Saturdays. So it was kind of more of a hobby, but also I started teaching there.
Was it challenging? Do you remember that first lesson?
Yes, it was very challenging because it was my first experience. So my first lesson, I was very nervous. Just my students were 17 years old. I think the youngest one was 15 or 16. And they were 6 or 7 students. So at first I was very nervous because I was thinking, well, as we are the same age or almost the same age, they are going to see me and they are going to think, well, what could he know that I don't know? Yeah. So probably he doesn't know anything about English. And I thought that they wouldn't pay attention to me, all that stuff. So that was the biggest challenge at first, to fight myself, I would say. But then I just started talking, and fortunately, they paid a lot of attention. They seemed to be very interested in that. And well, I just started talking and I felt very confident.
I think a lot of us go through a very similar experience, right? Where you start teaching very young and it might be a little bit intimidating to work with students that, like you said, are very close to your age, right? How did you overcome? I know you said started talking, started building connections, but what would you say was your strategy or what did you do to finally get over or get through that maybe small age gap?
I was still studying at the college. So, but even with that, I knew that English is something that has always been with me like all my life. So I started learning when I was 5 years old. So in the very moment that I started, I was in front of the classroom and I started talking and I listened to myself. It was like talking to myself and say, you know what you are doing, you know what you are saying, you know that you are not mistaken. So I felt very confident within that very moment.
So believing in yourself, right?
Exactly. Yes, like trusting.
Amazing. And now that you've been teaching for some time, Is there any advice that you would go back and give yourself?
First of all, I would say that, like, I have to have confidence in myself, and also that it would be a very long road because, as I said, I didn't finish school in that moment. I was still studying, but I didn't know that in this world of teaching, I would have to face a lot of challenges and I would have to learn even more and every day. So I would just say, don't just think that you have all the knowledge. Yes. And even though you know the words that you see in the board, you're going to learn a lot more, and not only about English and, and about teaching. You're going to learn about students and about how to treat them and how to be a good teacher too.
You mentioned something very important, that today, I know we're teaching English, language education, but it goes beyond, like you said, isolated words, isolated vocabulary, and we do teach life skills.
Exactly.
And I love how you said you teach, but at the same time, you're constantly learning, right?
Right.
Is there anything in particular you have learned from your students?
There are a lot of things. Well, firstly, about, for example, social media and not how to use it, but for example, trends and all that stuff. Every time that I listen to them saying a word or something that I don't know, and they tell me, this means this and this means that. But also, something that they have taught me is that to have a lot of passion and fun in what you're doing, because I also taught to elementary students, and there was one moment when one of them told me, "Teacher, you look tired. Are you having fun here with us? Do you feel good here with us?" And I said, "Yes," but probably I was thinking of a lot of problems at home, and and so on. So they told me that always having fun every day makes your day, well, easier to take on. So that's why all my classes, I try to have an activity to, well, for them to feel comfortable and to have fun. Yes, it can be, I don't know, digital activities like Kahoots or any other game. And every time that I see them, for example, that they are tired or that they are not really understanding something, I try to make it fun. And it was because of that, because my elementary students told me that if the class is fun, yes, everybody is going to feel very happy and relaxed and good where they are.
I think that's really good advice, especially now that we're currently in a university setting. You work, at least for now, with young adults or late teens. We won't get into that debate, right?
So
Young adults, adults. And I love how you still keep and you try to incorporate fun. I do agree with you. Is there any specific game or activity that you like and your students respond well to?
yes, there's an activity that I love a lot. In fact, I always try to apply this activity for all my groups. I call it the melody activity, and it's that they have to listen to five melodies and they have to write, yes, or speak about what they are feeling in the very moment they listen to the melody. But the fun thing is, or here, I have to say that I love playing video games. In fact, I started learning English with video games. And I know that some of them uh, do the same. I mean, they play in English or they have learned because they played in English. So the melodies are from video games.
Mhm.
And it's very funny when I, for example, play the tune and they say, this is from this video game. Or the activity finishes and they raise their hand and they say, "Teacher, is that from that video game?" Yes, it is. And in that very moment, it's like an icebreaker because at first they see you and I think that, well, they think that you're probably very strict or very stern,
Yeah.
no? But with that, I mean, they find Yes, that you are also a person and that you are not just as stern as they think. And also, if it is not about video games, it is also about series or TV series that they are very popular or that they like.
Do you think that's something important that us as teachers need to consider, build rapport, build connections, and help students feel, like you said, I loved, and you said it very beautifully, that we are humans too, right? Do you think that's important to get students to engage, connect, and just interact with us?
Yes, it would be very good for teachers to know the likes of their students so you can set them or apply them as examples for your class. And that is more engaging even for elementary students, but also for, well, here at the university, it is very useful. And that's something that keeps the student very focused on the class, because if you're mentioning something that they like or something that is trendy, it's going to be better for them. They are going to have a lot of interest in your class.
Definitely. And I know we're talking right now about the teacher as a human too. Is it hard balancing your work life? Is it to find that perfect balance? Or what do you do?
Yes, it is very difficult because I am going to be honest. I am a full-time teacher here, and I spend a lot of time here.
I imagine.
So, for example, I have to be here at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, and I have to leave at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. But also, I live in the state of Mexico, so it's
Mm,
2 hours in public transportation too to come here and also to get home. So it's like very tiring. But I always remember what my elementary school students told me. And it's because of that. Yes, it is very hard to find a balance between work and, my own life. But in order for me not to feel stressed or something like that, my favorite activity is playing chess. So fortunately for me, I have it on my cell phone. And I always try to play at least one match per day. And with that, I feel that I am doing something very fun, that I am not only like focusing on work. And also, classes help me for that because when I am in my office, for example, I have to work a lot on files and things on computer. But when I am in class and when I can play a Kahoot with them, or well, we can do different activities, it's like you're in a different world and you leave all the administrative things that you have to do outside and try to relax a little bit, play with them, speak to them also.
definitely. Now, you mentioned you have a long commute, 2 hours, right, to get to your school.
Yeah.
What keeps you coming back year after year, 13 years? What inspires you or what keeps you going?
Well, I want to leave a mark. That's something that I love, and that's the reason I started teaching. I want to leave a mark on the world, my mark. In fact, I had a teacher who told us, try to leave your mark on the world in any kind of way. And and I think that teaching is the way for me to leave my mark on students and on the world. They always remember, for example, a phrase that you always say in class, or something that you teach them more than only English. Yes, values, something that they can apply for their lives.
Now, you said phrases. Do you have any go-to phrase, something that your students always say? I remember teacher Miguel saying this a lot in the class.
Well, yes, in fact, there are two. Um, For university students, this doesn't really happen, but there's a quotation which is like everybody makes choices, but in the end, the choices make us. So I try to always tell them, be careful with the decisions that you make here at school and outside school, because remember that you're going to need them outside for job and for your lives. But there's also a different one, and it was when I was teaching at preschool. It was very funny because I used to say, "Oh my goodness." Everything that
Yeah.
happened, for example, I don't know, here I have a bottle, and let's just say that I dropped the bottle, something like that, and I say, "Oh my goodness." There was one girl. who she was probably 4 or 5 years old. I don't know. But it was very funny because she started saying the same phrase. And for example, if she dropped her crayons, she said, "Oh my goodness." And I knew that it was because of me.
That's really nice. Introduce students to those chunks of language, right? Those phrases. And I think I'd like to think that somewhere you have that student that's no longer in preschool, but she probably still says, "Oh my goodness," and thinks of you.
Yes, I hope so. Yes, because of course, well, she was in preschool. I'm not working there anymore, but I just hope that she still says that when she speaks English.
I'm sure. I'm sure she remembers you fondly.
Hello, it's Joel here. It's time for a teaching tip from Miranda Hamilton, who has over 25 years of experience as a teacher, teacher trainer, and educational consultant. Miranda shares her top tip on how you can collect evidence of learning from your students.
Evidence is information about what learners know and what they can do. So the starting point is the learning objectives. You've got to know what you're looking for. So you have to target and collect the evidence that's relevant, linked to what you want learners to do better at the end of the class that they couldn't do at the beginning. There's multiple ways of collecting evidence. You can collect evidence by monitoring learners going around the classroom. Don't feel shy. Take a notebook, link it back to the learning objectives. You can collect evidence simply through observation. You can collect evidence by asking learners questions and planning those questions to find out what they know and what they can do. So think about those beforehand. What do you want to find out? What do you need to ask to get that information? But you can also collect evidence from student writing. You can see on the page what they know, what they can do, relative to what you've been teaching them. You can collect evidence from test scores. It's not all about the classroom. If you give them a test, you can reflect on what you've observed in the classroom and map it to what you've noticed in the test. So you are triangulating the evidence you've collected. But all evidence is good evidence, but work with it. Use it to evaluate what your learners know and what they can do.
Now, Teacher Miguel, how do you celebrate students? How do you celebrate their accomplishments? Because a certification is not simple. It's not an easy task. How do you help them feel proud, or how do you motivate them?
You have to be with them in a different way. So I try to motivate them. Some students come and they say, "Teacher, I think that I am not going to make it." But I
Yeah.
tell them, "No, of course you can do it. I mean, we have been working a lot on this. I know your skills. I know you can do it." So when they pass, they look for me again here at school and they tell me, "Teacher, I could do it." Then now here's the proof of it.
I love how you help them believe in themselves. I think it's also important that we celebrate what students can do, because I know many times we always think about the "I couldn't" part, what I did wrong, what I wasn't able to do. But I definitely agree that part of celebrating and these certifications is definitely proving your skills, just like you said, and showing the world what we can do with our English. So I love that. And I'm sure that moments like that, where students come to you and thank you, probably make you feel very happy and proud, right?
Yes, in fact, it is like that.
We have this moment in teaching. We call it, the feeling when. That feeling when a student comes back and says thank you, or when a student says that they were able to accomplish or maybe get a really high passing grade. Is there any that feeling when moment that you can think of?
Here at the university, there was a student who was like very nervous for the certification because he saw other students, and he came to me, and he told me, "Teacher, they seem to have like an innate knowledge about this, and I don't know anything. I mean, I know a little stuff about this, but not just like them. And I told him, yes, but here we're going to practice a lot in the classroom. So, but if you also do it at home, if you do it every day, I trust and I know and I could bet that you're going to make it. You're going to receive the same grade, for example, or even better than them. And at first, he didn't believe in himself. But yes, well, the months passed. And then when he finished, when he got certification, he got the result that he wanted. And I told him, well, he was also like almost crying. And I told him, it's not only about innate knowledge or the innate skills, because you can also develop those skills if you practice a lot. So here is the result. And that is one of the moments that in teaching, when you see the students, when they come, when they thank you, but in that moment, when you see all the progress, because it was at first, I saw him at first having very little knowledge, but in the end, he could pass the certification and he was having the same result that the other ones who have a very good background with English.
I'm sure you felt very proud too, right?
Yeah.
Now, I really like how you say that growth mindset is important, right? Where we're not just born with a set of skills and that's it. That's what we have. There's ways of improving. There's a way of learning new things with consistency and practice. Do you think that's part of your teaching philosophy?
Yes, in fact, it is something that I do for myself, not only for teaching, for life, is to improve every day. I also and always try to teach them that, not only for English, try to improve, I don't know, if you have something that is making you feel uncomfortable with your life, try to improve it, try to do something about it. I mean, because there are people who say, yes, with time, everything is going to come. No, but you have to make it happen,
Definitely.
And that's something that I do for myself and also for teaching and also for them. So every time that they finish English, if there is something that I would like them to take away from my class, is not only the English knowledge, but also that way of trying to improve every day for their lives, for their relationships, for everything.
Now, I agree. And I can definitely see you nurturing and inspiring your students. But I do have a question. You're a very busy teacher, right? What advice do you have for those teachers who want to, for example, develop or improve their teaching, but they don't have time? How can a teacher start improving themselves?
First, I would say that just as a student, just like the students, they don't have to think that they know everything. Yes, because there's always something that you can improve. So, something that I would tell them is to read a lot of books about teaching. That's a good thing to do. For example, I learned a lot when I was doing my first certificate. I learned about not only exercises, but ways to teach. And I learned a lot of strategies. Also, they can watch some videos and they can also try to get involved with the classroom in a way that they remember that we are like a community. So, yes, I think the teacher is kind of a guide, like a leader for the students. And just because of that, you have to be very confident of yourself.
And do you take notes? Do you have a journal, or are you just very receptive and remember things?
Not really directly notes, but for example, one of my activities here at school is also to help other teachers for that. Here we have something that is called the boss program and the best practice.
Mhm.
So in that best practice, we have this contact with other teachers, and sometimes we observe their classes, but not in a very in a way in order to judge them. It's just to help them. and tell them, you can do this, you can try this strategy, or please tell me about this activity because that's something that I didn't know.
Yeah.
For example, they always teach you something. And it's just like this space for us to speak, so I can give them advice, but I can also learn from them. For example, if they have a new activity for me, I don't take notes, but I always try to remember it.
Like you said, I think it's important to watch and take what we think might work, try it out, and then maybe we can add it to our toolkit, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Teacher Miguel, if you're ready, I have a couple of fun, fast, quick fire questions for you. The first thing that comes to mind, and let's go ahead and start. Morning lessons or afternoon lessons?
Morning lessons.
What's that one thing that you couldn't live without in your class?
My laptop.
Can you tell me what's your worst teaching habit?
Oh my goodness. I think that it would be that I stay in a part of a classroom like for so much time, and then I forget, and I just stay, for example, very near from my desk because I have to have a computer then, but I remember then and I have to move around.
Yeah, you monitor once you catch yourself and
Uh-huh.
you start monitoring. Okay. Are you a tech-savvy teacher? Do you go for digital resources or are you more pen and paper?
No, definitely digital resources.
And this one is very important for me, okay? Are you a coffee drinker or tea?
No, a coffee drinker.
How do you drink your coffee?
Well, no sugar at all.
Very brave, very brave. Now, Teacher Miguel, it was a pleasure hearing you. It was very inspiring. Thank you so much for your time and knowledge.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.